Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of the Press Pause podcast. I am Spooner Sloth and my fellow co-host HB Fox. Tonight, or this afternoon, whatever, maybe this morning, we will be talking about something that most of you probably don't really ever think about, especially if you're just a layman, regular Twitch viewer or gamer or somebody that's invested in gaming in some way, shape, or form. We're going to talk about Microsoft and Tencent.
Now, I think a lot of people may not immediately recognize the name Tencent, because unless you're like really invested in the industry, it's not a name that you're going to see plastered anywhere, because they're more of a parent company than anything else. They own a lot of minor companies, or in some cases major companies, so you see the names of those companies on everything rather than the name Tencent, unless you're looking at the fine print.
Right, so it's kind of, it's not like the shadowy, behind the scenes kind of in a sketchy way, but more so just it's the pure and utter unadulterated business aspect.
Yeah,
of the industry.
It's an umbrella corporation essentially.
Right. But not like the umbrella corporation.
Not, well,
that we know
never,
of, right?
You never know.
Right. Whereas, it's interesting because a company like Tencent, I mean, I imagine if you are in Europe or in parts of Asia, you definitely know what it is. Or if you work with them in your profession, then you know it. But it's interesting to me that a company like Microsoft, which is the other side of the coin that we're discussing, is a very, obviously it's a very forward-facing. There isn't a living soul, that doesn't live in a mud hut, and most of them do know of Microsoft.
Yeah.
Like Microsoft is just, it's everywhere, and it's been for a very, very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into that discussion, how was your week, Spoon?
My week was good, man. It's been hectic. Yesterday, the 5th, was my 11-year wedding anniversary, 13 years with my wife.
Congratulations.
And thank you. Tomorrow is my 10-year-old turning 11. I've been calling her my 11-year-old for months now.
Not tomorrow. A few days ago.
Oh, right. Sorry. Okay, on the 7th. So a few days ago. Sorry, we put this out on Fridays. Anyways. Yep. But yeah, other than that, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. I'm ready for the summer to be over. I'm ready for the temperatures to cool down. Yep. I'm ready for school to start. Like kids around the world and teens are like, damn it, no. But as a stay-at-home dad, I'm like, yeah, I got 8 hours. Just 6 to 8 hours during the day to do this, right?
Yeah, right on.
And you, sir, how are you doing? Are you sweating? Is it like 39 degrees centigrade up there? Or what are you looking at?
It's, I think last I checked, it was like 32 degrees Celsius, which to a lot of people isn't going to seem like a lot, but I think we touched on this in the last podcast episode, or maybe it was one of the other things I was doing where I was talking to you. It's situational. Mm-hmm. I live in Canada. 20 degrees Celsius to me is boiling hot. So yeah, anything above 30 is disgusting. My province is burning down. I think we are up to like 700 and something active forest fires at the moment.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Pretty much everywhere from the southern point of because we live literally 200 miles away from each other. We live, you're a little bit further north than I am. The entire western seaboard of the continental North America, not just U.S., but from the tip of Canada, from the tip of California, all the way up to just before Alaska is a giant feckin' forest fire.
Yeah, I was looking at the map that lays out all the fires in the province the other day, and I think there was more fire icons on that map than there was actual terrain.
I wouldn't be surprised, man. Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised though that last year, this time last year, it was apocalyptic. The sky was orange. There was smoke everywhere.
Well, see, last year the fires were a lot closer to you and to me. But all of that stuff hasn't recovered yet, so there's nothing there to burn down.
There's nothing to burn.
The fires are further out.
Right, so everything that managed to survive last time isn't going to survive.
Yeah.
And I mean, right now one of the big concerns people talking about like forest fires spreading here in Washington State because there wasn't enough rainfall. There wasn't enough of a winter last winter from 2017 coming into 2018. So there's no snow melt. So there's like all the creeks are dried up, and it's a crappy situation.
It is. So that's my week.
On to happier news. On to happier discussion.
On to more interesting news at the very least.
Right.
So as we talked about at the start, we want to kind of dive into the state and the movings of specifically Microsoft and Tencent. Now, these are two companies that are based out of completely different countries, completely different continents.
Completely different cultures.
Different cultures, different everything. But the reason why we're kind of putting them side by side is because A, it's the same industry, roughly, and B, they're making very similar moves in their respective countries and surrounding countries. For anyone that watched the E3 presentation that Microsoft did, you'll have seen the announcements that they had for some acquisitions by Microsoft Studios specifically, which is not necessarily directly kind of lumped in with Microsoft. Like Microsoft and Microsoft Studios are two different entities, but they're both like owned by this. It's corporation.
It's just a different. It's corporation jargon. It's essentially you think about it like it's a different arm, right?
Yeah. So from this point forward, when we're talking about Microsoft Studios, we're probably just going to say Microsoft because it's easier. But they had 4 major acquisitions that they announced at E3. One of them was Ninja Theory.
Right. One of them was the Hellblade game, the one that recently came out.
Yeah. One of them was Undead Labs. So for anyone that's unfamiliar with Undead Labs, they did the State of Decay games, 1 and 2. That was, I don't remember when those games came out exactly, but they had a pretty decent following.
I think State of Decay 2 it was this year recently because I saw DJ streaming and I saw a bunch of other people on Twitch. It was May 22nd is when it came out. Right, so for like a good week or a month, I want to say, it was just everywhere you looked was State of Decay 2. Right? Yeah, they did a decent push on it.
The first one came out on June 5th in 2013. So a decent amount of time between the two, but both respectively very good games. And the studio is up to some super interesting stuff, now bolstered by Microsoft. And the next one that they announced was Compulsion Games, who are working on We Happy Few, which
getting a tremendous reboot.
Yeah. Initially, it got a fair bit of flack for not living up to what was promised. But the acquisition of the studio by Microsoft and the presentation that they did, excuse me, the presentation that they did at E3 looked really promising. It's very different from what was initially talked about with the game, but I think it's moving in a positive direction. And then the final one was Playground Games,
right?
Which Playground Games does the Forza Horizon series,
right? And they've been doing Forza for a while, but they never have owned Playground Games. They just worked with them. Now, it's just it seemed like the next step was just to go ahead and just take them.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think let me bring this up to know that I'm not just talking out my ass here. The Forza Horizon series has been an Xbox exclusive since the first one came out in 2012, and Forza 4 coming out this year has come out already. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm terrible when it comes to keeping racing games, to be honest. I know the Crew came out, but that's Ubisoft.
I don't actually. I've never really played the Forza games all that much, but every time they do an announcement for one of them, every time they show off a Forza game, I'm just marveled by it because it's such a beautiful environment.
Well, racing games in general are a great way to to sell people on the specs of of hardware.
Yeah, I think they showed off for Forza 4 at E3 that it had like seasonal stuff where the seasons actually change in the game.
Yeah, it looked
and it
ridiculous.
Impacts the environment and stuff. And like I'm debating, pulling my Xbox One out of the closet and dusting it off just to play that game. Actually, I won't have to because it's coming to Windows 10 as well.
I wanted to talk about that for like a brief moment. I mean,
but we're on the subject of Microsoft right now, so
right. It strikes me as interesting. I mean, I've been mind boggled at Microsoft since the PS4 and Microsoft One came out. Like I've just been very confused. Like there's a lot of fanboyism with a lot of different people, right? There's that group that want us, I live and die and breathe this brand and I don't like the other brand, whatever. It always struck me that when it comes to consoles, when it comes to Sony versus Microsoft, things of that nature, right? Or Nintendo and so forth. It's exclusivity is something that us as consumers, we don't dig. We clearly don't like, I got friends, I have viewers and friends that are like, I have an Xbox One. I can't play with you. I don't have that. But, if it's coming out, everything that is coming out for the Xbox One is also coming out for the PC. Why would I spend an extra, $50,000 to get a console when I could just get it on PC?
You wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
And I think Microsoft recognizes that. So, taking one step back here on the note of exclusives, I think there's a few different levels of understanding in the consumer base when it comes to exclusives. There's the people that really dislike exclusives, whether it's completely exclusive or timed exclusive. There's a fair number of people that just straight up despise the fact that exists, which, understandable. If I have an Xbox One, I don't want to have to go out and buy another console for the exact same price just to play, one or two games that look interesting to me. I don't want to do that.
Right.
Why am I going to throw away my money like that?
And then there's the time that you mentioned. It's funny you brought that up. That's I'm in a unique position. Not even a unique. I'm in that position. When I played Destiny 1, I played it on my PS4. I had access to things that my Xbox players did not have access to.
Yeah.
With Destiny 2, I jumped to PC. And being a PC player, there's a strike, there's a dungeon, there's content that I still do not have access to, and I will not have access to it until I think this December or maybe next January.
Something like that, yeah.
What it's like.
Quite a while.
You don't think about it. Like I was bothered by it at the beginning. I don't really care about it now until I see somebody put up a video on YouTube and I go, "What is that? I haven't been there. I want to." Oh, right, yeah, I don't get that for a while.
So that kind of segues into the other level of understanding when it comes to exclusives. There is a part of the consumer base that understands that exclusives also drive innovation within the production companies, not necessarily the development companies, because the developers are going to develop what they develop. But the production companies, they want to be able to compete with those other exclusives. So that's going to then, drive them to take the steps to compete.
Right.
Which competition amongst the producers is always going to be a positive thing for the consumers. It's going to be better product for us, sometimes at a better price as well. We're seeing that a lot now with these. I don't necessarily want to call them indie titles because some of them are bigger than that indie bracket.
Did that even get
AA titles?
Yeah, like a AAA indie game. Like Hellblade Setsuna is a AAA quality game. That's the thing. People don't like. What does AAA mean? When you hear AAA, you expect a high production value.
I think at this point, a lot of people simply associate AAA with the price bracket.
Right, the price. And then people think indie, everybody just instantly thinks it's a pixel art, side-scrolling, small thing that is immensely fun but I put it down after like a couple hours.
Yeah.
Which isn't always the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't even count how many indie titles are on my like top games of all time list. There's just so many phenomenal ones out there. But back on the exclusives thing, that level of understanding that those exclusives can drive better results and better products for all of us, it exists, and it's a very solid and sound argument for exclusives to exist.
Right. Like something like the Spider-Man game that's coming out exclusively for the PlayStation.
Yeah.
You can't like one-to-one ratio. Microsoft can't really come out with, well, I'm going to make a Venom game, or I'm going to make, a different, direct competitor that's coming out for their console. Instead, they approach BioWare and EA, and they say, hey, or maybe this is the case. Bethesda. They went Bethesda. Bethesda's going to get the Fallout 76 beta on Xbox before we get it on PC and before anybody gets it on the PlayStation 4. And it seems like a very small thing, but Bethesda announcing on their updated FAQ that launched today, the 6th, saying, hey, everything you do in the beta will be the full game, and it will save into the launch. Which is not something you ever really typically see in a beta.
Yeah.
Unless, they put a little asterisk, if it's game breaking, obviously we'll erase it. Yep. But beta stuff usually gets wiped. That's why I don't really fuck around betas too much, because it's just gonna wipe. And I'll do it to test stuff out, but other than that, so it's interesting.
That kind of harkens to the whole timed exclusive thing,
right?
And as far as like the big companies go, at least here in North America, Nintendo's always been the king or queen of exclusives. Everything they put on their almost everything they put on their systems is exclusive to them. They tried to make their content exclusive at some point, which was, let's not get into that because we all know it was a stupid move. I think they know it was a stupid move.
They try to not. I think with Nintendo is they try to not play the game.
Well, Nintendo is. I have this way of describing Nintendo that I think is understood mostly by car mechanics, vehicle mechanics, and not so much by everyone else, but I continue to use it anyway because I think it's a great analogy. Nintendo is the Cadillac of these companies. And now a lot of people are going to think, well, Cadillacs are like big, expensive, fancy cars. Nintendo is not that. Well, yes, Cadillac is that, but Cadillac is also a testing ground. The Cadillac vehicles were always used as like prototype vehicles, used to test out these different pieces of equipment, pieces of technology before they went into the other vehicle lines.
Right.
And that's what Nintendo is. Nintendo takes these steps with all these prototypes, with all these new pieces of technology, motion controllers, motion sensors.
Yeah.
Nintendo was doing all this stuff long before Microsoft
gaming.
or Sony ever got on board.
Yeah.
So naturally, sometimes it's a flop because they're working out the kinks and the bugs, but that's Nintendo. That's what they do. And they really hit that mark sometimes, and sometimes they miss it. And then there's Sony and Microsoft, which are always kind of seen as the head-to-head competitors. And Sony has really pulled away with the exclusives in the last few years. More than that, like the last 5 or 6 years.
Yep, I would agree.
And I think Microsoft is getting to the point where they recognize that and understand that they can't necessarily compete directly with Sony when it comes to exclusives. And so they're taking a slightly different approach on their kind of competition. And they're going down an avenue that Sony is entirely incapable of doing. And that's the Microsoft Play Anywhere system.
Right. And mind you, we are in speculatory zone. This is just us looking at things and trying to... a lot of people will look at an E3 or will look at what a game company is doing, and they won't they don't ask why, or they'll be like why, but it's facetious. They don't really want to know why. They don't want to research it. But you kind of got to look at it like Microsoft buying all these like gaming backend services, streaming services, all these different things, and you wonder what are they going to build with that.
You know? So it kind of started with their games for Windows Live system, which was not a good system.
Yep.
They tried real hard with it, but it was ultimately a flop. But I will vehemently argue that the games for Windows Live system was actually a big success, because it is what became the Play Anywhere system. And the Play Anywhere system is, in my opinion, one of the greatest things to hit this industry.
Yep.
You buy a game, a Microsoft game, once. You can play it on your console. You can play it on your PC. The progress in the game, the save game files, the achievements, they transfer between the two. Like, you can play a game on your Xbox, shut it down, 30 seconds later, go to your PC and pick up exactly where you left off on your Xbox.
Right, and we're starting to see that philosophy. We're starting to see that too. If you note it with the whole Fortnite thing, since Fortnite kind of massively blew up, Microsoft can approach, Epic and be like, "Hey, we want our people to play with like Nintendo, or we want our console users to play with the PC players," and you literally, legitimately can have this like cross account kind of thing.
Yep.
And all that's done is just build a lot of goodwill, which is really important, because you'll always have the folks that'll be like, who won E3? And it's nice to see. I want to see every company do really good, because when companies compete, we win. Tremendously.
When they're all doing fantastic work, we as consumers reap the benefits of that.
Right.
I mean, obviously they do too, because they get our money, but we get stuff that's worth our money.
Right.
And as far as cross-platform play goes, point out specifically with Fortnite, since you brought it up, Sony. So I'm going to put the speculation disclaimer in here again. A lot of this is speculation. It's just,
we got to really toe the line on being insulting to Sony. I got to be real careful not to voice my opinion of like, could you pull your heads out of your asses, all of these brilliant Japanese men in a business suits.
I don't want to be overtly, offensive to them or overtly negative or anything. I kind of feel in episode 1 I may have been a little overtly negative towards Reddit when I picked on them.
I fuck Reddit.
I love Reddit, but I also hate Reddit.
Reddit, don't hit me, please. Just don't come after me.
Yeah. So I'm going to do the same thing with Sony right here. Sony, they seem very anti-cross-platform. They don't want any other companies, they appear to not want any other companies kind of dipping their toes in the Sony pool, so to speak.
Right.
It's ridiculous, because, I mean, we've seen the amount of attention and good press that has come out of cross-platform play between Microsoft and Nintendo, or Microsoft and mobile services, or Nintendo and mobile services. They're coming out with the new Pokemon game in November, which has kind of cross play with their mobile games. That's amazing. I love seeing that. It's more ways to utilize the technology that we have in interesting ways, while being very open to people that don't necessarily have the same platform as you do.
Right.
It connects everybody, and Sony seems to not want to make that connection.
God, do you
And
remember when mods were coming to Fallout 4 on console
mm,
and Bethesda was taking shots at Sony
yeah,
with all of their press releases like, "Listen, we want to do this, but Sony's not letting us,
I think Bethesda still takes shots at Sony.
yeah, and it just it's I don't know, man. It strikes me as bizarre.
It is a little bizarre. I want to say, well, I don't want to. I would have said some time ago that it's a cultural thing. Um,
That's what I
because,
originally. That was my knee jerk reaction to think it's a
yeah,
cultural thing.
Sony is based in Asia, and companies in Asia have a very different way of handling things and approaching things as opposed to companies in North America.
Hmm.
That's not just speculation. That's not me talking out of my ass. I happened to have a conversation about that specific thing with a representative of Square Enix last year, and those were like his words when he was trying to deal with Square over in Japan. And that would have been my go-to for Sony's current behavior. But you look at Nintendo, who is, based out of Japan, and they've done a huge turnaround when it comes to that kind of thing. And they're opening themselves up to other companies, to other avenues of content. And if a company that is so closed off as Nintendo is can do that, then what the hell is wrong with you, Sony?
Yeah, and
What are you doing?
I mean, you brought up Square Enix. I've been really thoroughly enjoying the Final Fantasy 14 crossover with Monster Hunter that Capcom and Square Enix are doing, where there's
Yeah.
Capcom content in a Final Fantasy game and Square Enix content in a Monster Hunter World game, and those are permanent fixtures. Those are gonna. It's not a timed crossover that's never coming back. It's a thing,
Yeah.
right? And it only serves to benefit both. But I mean, again,
Yeah.
we're kind of getting into a little into segue topics, but it's just interesting. I wanted to even go down this rabbit hole when it came to discussing exclusives, because it gives some context when we talk about, when so and so acquired, Ninja Theory, Undead Labs, Compulsion Games, Playground Games, and so forth. When a big company kind of eats up all these other development studios, it's you got to ask yourself not just why, but what value. Like the why is what value, what do they gain from doing this? Because right now, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm somewhat tone deaf. I don't have an Xbox. I don't have an Xbox One, I mean to say. And so whenever I look at E3 or I talk to my constituents or I talk to you or anybody else, it's like, is Microsoft just did they stop existing in this industry? Because like I don't know anybody that has I know like 3 people that have an Xbox One.
I'm one of them.
And what they play is, if I'm being totally honest, they play fucking Overwatch on the Xbox One. So I'm thinking or like, Goat Simulator or Cuphead, all of which is something you can play on your PC.
Yeah.
Or in some cases your PS4 as well. So I'm wondering, like, I don't want Microsoft to go away. I don't think they will. But like you touched on earlier, will they? It's not going to be like E3 of 2017 where it was like sports. They know that TV is dying. They know that cable TV is the horse and buggy. That's gone. Streaming TV, stuff like Netflix, Hulu, and so forth. People want that. Consumers want this.
So I think as far as like the console market goes, the last couple of years for Microsoft has been very exploratory.
Right.
When they first announced the Xbox One and its capabilities, they didn't sell it as a gaming console. They sold it as a home entertainment console.
Right, right.
Because all your TV programming and maybe sound like I'm in my 40s. All your TV stuff and your streaming stuff and your games can all be done through this home entertainment console.
Right. They wanted to sell the ecosystem. They were
yeah,
like,
exactly.
You want to use your Windows tablet with your Microsoft, Xbox One gaming console, watching this, all of it in the same thing.
And that worked for about 6 months. And then they realized that nobody uses it for any of that. Nobody wants to use it for any of that. And so they kind of shifted away from that to try and focus on their games. They tried to have a little bit of a competition with exclusives against Sony.
Even just timed,
It kept falling short. And then that's when they started to invest in their Play Anywhere program, which is still in its infancy. There isn't a whole lot available on it right now, but they're making moves to change that, and that's super exciting. And that's, I think, part of the reason why you don't really, unless you're an Xbox owner or wholly invested in Microsoft news, you don't hear too much about or from Microsoft because they are no longer competing in the exclusivity market the same way that they were before.
Right.
Now they're making that shift to the Play Anywhere, so you don't have that spotlight on their console systems anymore.
Right. I'm kind of wondering. It just popped into my head now is when we talk about Nintendo earlier, the first thing that pops into my head, like the word association game, is like they innovate. Right. They're always coming out with like the new thing, and it almost always is like a hit. Right. Motion controls were a big deal. The Switch has become like the thing in my household that is always on in some way, shape, or form. My kids are using it, or I'm using it, or whatever. Full disclosure, right? My wife used to work for Microsoft, and she is still a massive advocate of the company in a lot of different ways. She worked in the Bing platform, with a lot of the stuff that they do that nobody really even knows about, because you say Bing and people laugh at you nowadays. But man, if only you knew.
People think search engine, but it's so much more than just
right. It's funny because she and I had a similar conversation that when Microsoft innovates, it seems like they're innovating too many years too soon. Because like God, what was before Windows 10? Windows 8 and like 8.1 that everybody hated for whatever the hell reason, was designed entirely around using their ecosystem, like we talked about, where all your Apple products are with Apple products. Yeah. But it was also designed specifically for touchscreen.
Yes.
Right? So a tablet or a laptop, touchscreen monitors were not fucking accessible financially to people.
They were not the norm as they are now.
Right. And having used one, even using a Cintiq or whatever, oh my God, how fucking dope would it be if all of these monitors I have here were touchscreen? I think when you mentioned the Windows, live gaming thing, if everybody had, at least in the States, as good of an internet as you get in like, Switzerland and pretty much fucking anywhere in Europe, if we had options here in the States or in parts of Canada and whatnot, then it'd be a different beast. I think that
it would be,
the always online thing people hate, that when a company puts out, hey, always online, and immediately the internet's, in riot gear. If we never, ever, ever thought for a second that we would get lag or get disconnected or have, Comcast is shitting on me for 48 hours, then it would not be a problem. You wouldn't even bat an eyelash. I don't bat an eyelash with anything in Blizzard, because Blizzard games and their service and their servers are notoriously stable. So I think it's interesting when you see a lot of innovation, you see a company buying like servers or back-end services or developers that don't make games, they don't make anything, they make, like the in-between, services for these platforms to communicate with each other. That should be very telling.
Yeah, and I think that kind of, it steps into the territory of acquisitions that Microsoft has made outside of the video game industry, like GitHub they just bought,
that's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and I don't care what anybody says, that is the best possible thing that could have happened to GitHub, because GitHub was trash, and Microsoft is going to fix that. They bought Symantec, they bought AltSpace VR, they bought all of these platforms that they can then use to lift up their other platforms that all have these really interesting possibilities for integration into each other, despite being in different industries and down different avenues. And that also kind of steps into the territory of their live streaming service, Mixer, formerly known as Beam.
Right. I remember when it used to be Beam, now it's Mixer, and everybody thinks of Mixer. At least people watching this on Twitch or people who like me and you that are pretty embedded with Twitch. People think, oh, Mixer, and then they laugh.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of people starting to like move over to Mixer, and you see Mixer revising their partnership requirements, and suddenly Mixer is going to start being the alternative to Twitch if we don't like what Amazon's going to push.
One of my most favorite conversations that I had at TwitchCon last year was with your wife about Mixer specifically. I played the part of being very anti-Mixer in that conversation. But truth be told, I'm really excited and have always been really excited by the things that Mixer is doing. Not so much when they were Beam, because they weren't doing much.
Yeah, they weren't doing much.
But when Microsoft acquired them and they became Mixer, they started to make those really innovative moves for the platform. And Microsoft being Microsoft, having all these other subsidiaries under them, can integrate those into Mixer. And a couple of years down the road, when the Play Anywhere system is starting to approach its prime, I think we're going to see a lot of really unique things happen between the Microsoft Store, the Microsoft Play Anywhere system, and Mixer.
And streaming.
There's some integration possibilities there and distribution possibilities there that are far beyond the reach of any other streaming platform like Twitch and YouTube gaming.
I wouldn't even mention YouTube gaming at this point. Like I would mention like Facebook maybe.
I was just hoping to have more examples there, but there really isn't anything outside of Twitch, at least for North America. There is.
Right, and it's interesting because we're doing an entire episode or 3 on Twitch itself, but when Mixer comes out with a change, right, or they come up with a policy or something, and everybody on Twitter, and let's just say everybody on social media is just cheering, and why can't Twitch do that? And then Twitch doesn't. They don't move quick on it because they don't feel the need to. It's like you're not competition for me. Give it more time. Let that ego continue to eat away at what Twitch is going on. What Twitch has got going on. Sorry. Yeah. Eventually, it will be a competitor.
I think Mixer and Twitch as companies are in very, very different positions right now. Mixer is in a position that Twitch was in, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, when everybody got partnered and all these things started happening, right?
Like on the corporation and organization side, Mixer is new. They have a very communicative team behind it. They're working really hard to lift the platform up to what they all believe it can be, and they're doing an amazing job of that. And they have this organization and this structure in place, whereas Twitch right now is speculation. Twitch right now is like everybody running around with their heads on fire, because there's so much going on at Twitch, and there's so little communication between the departments of Twitch that nobody knows what anyone else is doing, and so nothing really flows smoothly.
Some things within departments they do.
Yeah,
but you're not independent little companies.
It's not to say the entirety of Twitch is just a bunch of cats running around doing nothing. I mean, Twitch wouldn't exist if that was the case.
Right.
There's a lot of good and amazing things happening at Twitch, but the communication that Mixer has right now at this stage, Twitch does not have.
Mm-hmm.
And they're working to correct that on Twitch's end. They're working really hard to organize all of their departments and get that communication flow happening again. But while they're doing that, Mixer is building themselves up because they already have that communication in place. They already have that organization in place. So by the time Twitch, I stuttered there, by the time Twitch gets to where they need to be, Mixer is going to be in a really good place to be their competition.
Right. And we're starting to see a lot of at least in my opinion, the future of Twitch being the mistakes of YouTube. Like when it comes to, DMCA strikes, copyright things, liability. I keep having the same conversation with the wife as well. It's like there are so many people, there's so much saturation on this platform, and you still have the culture of a company that is small.
Yep.
So a small company culture, suddenly they got to hire up like 500 more heads just to be engineers, just to keep the wheels turning. And they're, like you said, it's difficult for that to really, like, for that to thrive, right? It's difficult for that kind of, that culture shift to work, as far as moving forward.
And I mean, I've been saying a fair amount of kind of negative things about Twitch, but I love Twitch, and I'm wearing a Twitch hoodie right now. For those that are listening to the podcast, I'm wearing a Twitch hoodie right now. Twitch is my home as far as broadcasting goes.
Mm-hmm.
It's how I got into the industry. It's how I have made my career. I love it and want nothing but amazing things for it. But at the same time, that love and that desire, I think, allows me to realistically look at where it's falling short. So it sounds like I'm saying a lot of negative things about it, but they're meant in a constructive way.
Well, of course, no, but being critical of something, a lot of people think there's a difference between being critical of something and just shitting on something. If you, like, there was even a discussion about, I think it was Greats was talking about, when a streamer is broadcasting and somebody comes in the chat and gives them a critique about how chat is dead or something like that. And the difference between being a prick and just bashing on something, being negative for the sake of being negative, providing feedback, air quotes, without it actually being feedback. It's just somebody digging on something versus somebody who is legitimately invested or passionate about whatever the thing may be. And then, like, I'm being critical of it. I'm giving you feedback. This is the bad that I see. I don't really have a very good idea how it could get better. Here's some ballpark stuff to spitball it. How can we make it better? So it's just be critical. I don't feel that you ever have to apologize for
absolutely. And like I'm going to use that as a segue to get back into the main topic here, and elaborate a little bit on that, and put a request out there for anyone that's watching or listening to this. When you hear about all of these acquisitions and these mergers that are happening, try and kind of shed any overtly negative thoughts that you have about it, and look at what can be beneficial from those things. And I say this because I had a conversation with somebody about Microsoft acquisitions, and their immediate go-to was, oh, it's Microsoft. They're going to ruin everything. They're going to drive everything into the ground.
Everybody they get I call it the EA reflex, right?
Yeah, and I want to ask that everybody don't just automatically go to that, and try and look at these as, how is this going to impact us as consumers and these studios specifically in a positive way. Now, Microsoft has all of these resources at their disposal, and these acquisitions that they're making with these game companies, with these studios, as they pointed out in their E3 presentation, isn't to just scoop them up and eat them. It's to help them do what they're already doing and do it better. Right.
I mean, a lot of budget is money and infrastructure really ends up being a big problem. That
Yeah.
if you've ever tried to kickstart something, I did. I didn't actually get to the phase of beginning to kickstart it. I was just looking at what it requires to get into it, and infrastructure and money is really fucking hard. It's a big hurdle for a lot of indie devs and even smaller development houses or even just people.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
You can have great ideas, but if you don't have money and people who can help you move things, your ideas are going nowhere.
Yeah, perfect example is an indie studio that I did contract work for. The game that they are producing is not what it should have been. It is not what they wanted it to be, was not the original vision for the game. And the reason for that is because they didn't have the money, basically. That's what it boils down to, is they didn't have the money to fuel their dream for this game. So the game is becoming, frankly, something that I don't think they ever wanted it to be and still don't want it to be, but have to do in order to bring in the revenue.
Well, you gotta keep the lights on. At the end of the day, a lot, and people don't seem to. I mean, it kind of goes back a little bit to last episode, where it's like there's a dehumanizing aspect on the internet when you read a press release or when you see a game developer put out something and you just kind of like, they're not always super out of touch. Sometimes they just gotta fucking eat,
Yeah. So when you see these acquisitions by companies like Microsoft, please try to keep in mind going into the information that this can be a very good thing. This can potentially mean that these studios can now produce the things that they were founded on, that they dreamt of producing with these resources produced by companies like Microsoft. Now, the other side of that coin is Tencent. Right. Basically, everything that we've said about Microsoft, you can also say about Tencent.
Tencent's huge.
Tencent is huge.
It's kind of hard to comprehend. When you first, I didn't even hear. I heard of Tencent, like the name seemed familiar, but then Fox comes up to me and is like, "I want to talk about this," and go, "Okay, what's that?" And then I looked into what Tencent is, and I failed to comprehend the size of this freaking company.
Yeah. Like calling them an umbrella corporation it's not even doing it justice. As far as like actual full-on acquisitions and assets, they don't have a huge list of things, but within that list is some pretty significant companies. Riot Games.
Yeah, they own Riot.
They straight up own Riot. And now, if anybody doesn't know who Riot Games is, how do you not know who Riot?
I mean, look, man, my 7-year-old has I think she doesn't know what Riot Games is, but like
she will eventually.
Yeah,
sure.
She will soon.
So, for those that don't know, League of Legends, Riot Games produced / owns / developed League of Legends, which is one of the big players on the esports market, one of the biggest players in the MOBA.
Yeah, no, you're right, MOBA.
In the MOBA field. In addition to straight up owning Riot Games, they also own ZAM.
Right,
now, ZAM isn't a game producing company, but they do have their hands in like nearly every MMO community that exists.
Yeah, the ZAM network's got. I mean, I think they were in WoW at one point as well.
Yeah, they're like I have never played an MMO that ZAM hasn't been a part of in some shape or form. Now, when I say part of, I don't mean like a part of the company that produced the game or necessarily a part of the game itself, but ZAM, they provide like wikis for MMOs. They provide community spaces for groups within MMOs.
Here, I'll break it down for you. ZAM owns Wowhead, so if you everybody has used Wowhead at some point. Hot Slogs, if you do Heroes of the Storm, they do all of the wikis for like Realm Reborn, Final Fantasy, this EverQuest. They have a lot of, and I think LOL King, which is a League of Legends deal, they run that as well.
So if you've ever looked up a wiki for an MMO, chances are you've landed on a ZAM page.
Right.
And Tencent straight up owns ZAM. And Supercell is, I think, one of their most expensive acquisitions. They paid like billion dollars.
Almost $9 billion, like with a B. All right, with a B. Billion.
Yeah, not an M, a B. and I think
money.
That number alone is really telling on the size of Tencent. You may not know the name Tencent, but if they can pay $9 billion for a company, they've got their hands in a lot of pots to be able to have that kind of money. And companies like Supercell and Riot and ZAM, and I think their most recent one was Grinding Gear. That's where they get all their money. Now, in addition to those straight up acquisitions, they also have holdings and shares in a list of companies that is so long that you probably couldn't actually find the full list somewhere on the internet.
It's currently being updated every day. They just
yeah.
And by holdings and they invest, I mean, for the layman who maybe doesn't know about stocks and so forth, they're not necessarily buying the majority share, but they own enough of the company that
they have a vote.
They have a vote. They have some influence, and they stand to gain something in particular from what that company does. So it's not enough. And typically, whenever you see an acquisition happen, whenever you see a bigger company kind of like buy a smaller company, or even a similar size, like a merger, it starts off with owning a piece of it. It starts off with an investment or with holdings and things like that.
And so that's basically Tencent's path that they're currently on, is putting, I don't want to use the phrase putting their hands in everyone's pockets, because that implies some sort of negativity there.
They're sewing everybody. It's like they're putting tubes from their wallet to everybody else's wallet. It's like, hey, money can go both ways, but
exactly,
there's like a connection.
They just like Microsoft, they buy these companies or they buy stakes in these companies, and they help to bolster those companies. It's not a one-way street for them, especially not with the funds that they have. And they're growing exponentially. They're coming over now to North America as well. And they're starting to branch out into broadcasting, content creation, broadcasting. Now, this also ties into Microsoft, because Microsoft has Mixer, which is their broadcasting platform. Tencent, I didn't know this until I actually received an email from Tencent, but Tencent also has their own broadcasting. I don't know if it's a platform or if it's like a broadcasting space on a different platform, but I believe it's primarily a mobile one, but it can be used on like a PC as well. But it's called Yingyang Bao, which I don't know what that means in English.
It's similar to something like a Periscope, or
I believe so, or at least that's how it started. But it can do broadcasting in the same way that Twitch does, in the same way that Mixer does. And they're starting to pull a Mixer, which is pay people to use their platform.
Right.
That was always my biggest criticism about Mixer initially, was that they had to pay people to use their platform, and they still do, but they do it in a very upfront and successful way now. But Tencent is reaching out to broadcasters on platforms like Twitch and Mixer and saying, hey, do you want to play our game on our broadcasting platform,
right.
we'll pay you. We'll pay you good money. And that's their kind of tendrils starting to reach into North America, because they're contacting North American broadcasters to do this. They may be contacting European ones as well. I don't know.
Without a doubt, there's. I mean, you don't even need the evidence of it. If your main market is currently in Asia, you're obviously gonna grow from there. But when you said it, it's like it sounds so nefarious, right? It's like, ooh,
it does.
However, I mean, if you watch like King Goth or Broman or Co or anybody, you ask these people who have a mortgage, who have families or are beginning to have families, and it's like, hey man, if I could guarantee you would have a steady income for like a year, and it would be this much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, look, man, it's at that point, it's no longer like I'm going to be loyal to my. No, put food on the table, take care of your family, take care of business.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with accepting an offer, a paid offer to move to a different platform.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're not sacrificing yourself for it.
Right. As long as it doesn't like break some moral principle.
Yeah, it's a whole nother discussion, probably a whole nother episode.
Right. It's the difference between when I said stable income versus unstable income. You know, it doesn't. Your sub count don't matter anymore. Your ad revenue doesn't matter anymore. You are now a salary worker. You don't got to worry about overtime. You don't got to worry about getting hours. It's you just come in, do your thing.
That was one of the big draws for a lot of people over to Mixer.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of these broadcasters wouldn't admit to it, which I wag my finger at you.
You wag your finger.
They were offered a salary, a guaranteed X number per year on top of whatever their community supported them with. That's a very enticing offer.
Dude, I'll tell you right now, I would take it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Like in a fucking heartbeat. I would, yes.
Yeah, I will openly admit that I considered putting a proposal together to approach Mixer with. Ultimately didn't do it, but I very much considered it, because how could you not consider such a thing if you can make that move while still maintaining the foundation of your community?
Right.
Do it. But Tencent is starting to make those types of moves into North America as well. I'm not going to give exact figures, but I will say with the funds that they have, they're making very enticing offers. Like the dollar figure is double digit per minute of content produced.
Yeah, that's
huge, especially if you're able to get a deal where you produce hours of content daily.
Right.
That is a lot of money, and Tencent has the kind of money to do that as well. So I'm expecting to see a lot of moves in the coming 2 to 3 years from Tencent into North America, and I'm expecting at the same time a lot of pushback from Microsoft making those exact same moves on their home continent. I don't know what's going to come of it. I don't know if it's going to end up being a genuine kind of head-to-head clash between them, or if Tencent's going to back off, if Microsoft is going to back off, maybe Tencent's going to move more into the kind of mobile streaming market in North America. I don't know. A lot of things can happen. A lot of really good things, a lot of really bad things, a lot of really interesting things.
Right. And then there's the other side there's not other side. I guess one of the facets would be like a cultural thing too. You know, I mean, are we going to start seeing, with all these things happening in the background that are kind of like telegraphing, are we going to start seeing more of like a rise in celebrity? Are we going to start seeing, you know, right now you look at content on Twitch, you look at content on Mixer, and most of it, I would argue, is not sponsored content. It's not paid for content. Sponsored doesn't necessarily mean the broadcaster was paid in cash, it means maybe the broadcaster was paid in, here are 40 free copies of a game, and I will pay you X amount of money for 2 or 3 streams, you know? And then you could choose to continue playing the game after the fact or do the giveaways later, but it's you know, the majority is we don't see a lot of sponsored content. We see some. What would end up happening if, I mean, like, the advertising ad revenue, like when we see ads, you know, with YouTube and the adpocalypse and everything, that model for making money on this, in this profession, in this career, in this aspect of the gaming industry as a whole, that isn't as viable anymore. People love their ad block. People love being a sub because they don't see ads or using, you know, Twitch Prime or Turbo or whatever it is. So the question begs, like, well, how is it that these individuals are going to start making money? I'm talking about like your higher up individuals, you know, your upper tier. They're going to make it through sponsored deals. If you have companies like Tencent, you have companies like Microsoft, you have you know, like the Uplay Ubisoft All Stars. You know, you have a lot of these subsidized. I mean, I hate to even use the word because I feel like I'm talking about farmers in America. You know, you have companies subsidizing content creators, be like, hey man, you know, I'll give you $400 if you do 3 days of streaming, you know, only streaming my game between this hour and that hour, and you guarantee me you're going to give me that minimum of like 400 viewers, or like how many views per minute are you expecting? How much money do you want to make per hour, per minute based on viewership? Things of like all these weird little equations that work into it. We may see a lot more of that, and that's not a bad thing.
We're starting to see it already with on Twitch specifically. The Twitch Bounty Board program, which is in beta right now, offers. I think it's exclusive to partners at the moment. With everything that they do, I'm sure they're going to branch out to affiliates as well.
Yeah, partners are like beta testers right now that just get better.
Partners are the Cadillac of Twitch.
Yeah.
So the bounty board system, for those that don't know, is essentially everything that Spoon just described. It's like a list of companies that are willing to sponsor broadcasters to play their game or whatever it happens to be. But it's not the broadcasters having to reach out to these companies, or the companies even having to reach out to the broadcasters. It's all done through Twitch now. You can go to the bounty board page. You can see all the offers that are listed. You can select the one that you want to do. And, you know, if you meet the time requirements or the viewer count requirements or whatever it happens to be, there's your payday.
Right.
So we're already starting to see the platforms make moves away from just playing ads and more towards making this sponsored content as accessible to the broadcasters as possible.
I mean, that helps. A change in culture, a change in mindset also helps Twitch. They came out with the affiliate program, as we know, because they were like, hey man, GameWisp we're not getting any of the money from GameWisp. We're not getting any of the money from PayPal. PayPal is getting money from PayPal. Twitch come out with bits. They come out with the affiliate program. They're like, hey, we want to cut, and they're gonna get, and they've changed. Notice since the affiliate thing went live, what a different atmosphere we have on Twitch as far as like when it comes to the revenue thing. And people are always reluctant to talk about revenue because discussing money somehow just people get weird about it. Like they immediately
and it's also for partners anyway. I don't know what the affiliate contracts like, but partners are specifically forbidden from talking about what their cut is.
Right, the percentage base, things like that. But like what you were the bounty board is something I predicted, and I had conversations with in private with the wife about. I mean, like, man, wouldn't it be cool if, and you just friggin' okay, that's something that they're actively working on. What's interesting is if they can make it so that this is the primary lowest barrier to entry, the most secure, no chargebacks, no funky way to make a living as a broadcaster, the most stable, you know, way to make a living as a broadcaster. But you kind of have to say you don't take PayPal on your thing anymore. how many broadcasters would be willing to do that? You know, to make that contractual agreement to be like, I want access to all these big sponsors. I want my face on a Tostino's freaking pizza rolls box. But a box is like a bag box. I can't even talk right now. I'm excited. It's
Yeah.
I mean, like, would you make that jump? Could you see a broadcaster making that jump? You know,
I could absolutely see a broadcaster making that jump. And
right.
personally for myself, I would do that in a heartbeat, because that would be, at least the ideal situation would be, a guarantee for a guarantee. They would guarantee to me that I would be able to make a living off of these opportunities that they're presenting to me. Now, the ability to actually make that living is up to me, but they're presenting the opportunity. And in return, I would guarantee to them that I cut out things like PayPal and stuff.
Right.
So the only person that's getting a cut of the money that I make is them, is Twitch.
Right.
And the only person that they're presenting those opportunities to is me. So a guarantee for a guarantee, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Well, you just described the exact fundamental mechanics of what a job is.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
when you get hired to do a traditional job, which is interesting because then that's something that's transferable, right? Like I can go to, whenever you apply for a job, you have your work history, right? When I go to, if I were to contact some big swinging, company and be like, hey, look, man, I did this sponsor, this sponsor, this sponsor, this sponsor. There's now an infrastructure. There is now a backbone for equivalency, right? For my value to be understood from one place to another, like grades or a transcript or whatever it is. I can't tell. I can't go ahead and send a message to Ubisoft and say, I got this much money from PayPal from people giving donations. That means I'm a good broadcaster. I would like to work, alongside you. And like, no.
Yeah. You'd be lucky just to get a response back from them. Just a one word like no email.
The no would be a step up. That'd be a miracle.
Yeah, it would be. But I think going down that road opens up some really interesting potential for companies like Microsoft and Tencent, who have these broadcasting platforms of their own, and then also have games and studios of their own. They wouldn't have to go through any sort of intermediary like Twitch would have to go to if they want to provide a Ubisoft opportunity.
Right.
Microsoft already owns these companies. They already own the broadcasting platform. Let's just slap it all together. Same thing with Tencent. They own these games. They own the platform. Why not put all their stuff together and offer it to their content creators at a good price, because it's their own stuff. They don't have to take any additional cuts out. So,
right. Not to mention, I mean, you were talking earlier about integration, right?
Yeah.
I can easily see a future within my projected time frame in my head of how long I'll be on Twitch as a broadcaster anyway, where I will boot up a game and play the game and stream it, and people can interact, boot up the game, play the game from from Twitch. The interaction that we're seeing a lot now, where chat can vote on things to happen or modifiers or that kind of thing. That integration is the next level. I would say it's the next level in monetization as far as these companies making money. It's the next level in broadcasters wanting to promote this particular content.
Yeah.
It just, all of it works for everybody's benefit. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the future, especially looking at the list of some of these, the AI platforms that these companies have been eating up, the VR stuff, conversational AI, which is really interesting because Microsoft bought semantic machines. So it's like AI talking to AI, which is kind of fucking funny when you think about it, because
it is.
Didn't we watch a live stream of two bots talking to each other for like hours that had hundreds of people, hundreds of thousands of people watching it?
It was an amazing broadcast too.
Right, it was phenomenal.
I mean, that kind of stuff happens even on excuse me, pardon my puberty. Happens on like Twitter and stuff as well, where these AI bots end up kind of coming across each other's paths, and then they have this huge conversation that sometimes nobody ever even sees,
Right.
but it's still happening. It's really entertaining, and it's really interesting to watch. And I mean, when Microsoft first unveiled Windows, I think it was with Windows 10 where they came out with Cortana, or was that?
No, Windows. I oh my god, my sins laid bare. So I had a Windows phone a while ago. We still have. My wife and I both had a Windows phones, and it's in the drawer over there now. But dude, let me tell you, I mean, I hate Cortana on my Windows 10, my desktop.
Yeah.
But I loved it on my phone because if I give a text and it would read it to me out loud if I asked it to.
Like, yeah, and well, the thing with Cortana
the AI was dope.
They produced Cortana before they owned companies like the conversational AI companies like Symantec Machines and stuff like that. So now that they have those companies and the experience of those companies, what can they do with their already existing products? Yeah. Like they can only make it better from there, right? So if they start with something that's already really good, it's going to become something great. And we've talked a lot about what Microsoft is doing, mostly just because I know more about Microsoft than I do Tencent. But for all I know, Tencent is doing the exact same things over in Asia. They might be doing it on a larger scale.
They'll probably be doing it for a lot less overhead too. Let's just be honest. 99% of the technology that we use today is manufactured in some way, shape, or form out of Asia. So I mean, and that's not even me stereotyping. That's me looking at the internals of your phone.
And rightfully so. I mean, the technology to produce those things is in Asia. The manpower to produce those things is in Asia. The resources to produce those things are being shipped to Asia.
Right.
So it makes sense to have it produced there. And then when you have big companies like Tencent also based in those same regions, I mean, it's a match made in heaven, right?
Yeah, they don't got to pay tariffs. They don't got to pay overhead or shipping or anything. So, they just bang on.
For all I know, Tencent is as much of a household name over there as Microsoft is here. I have no idea. That's why a lot of this particular episode is just being speculation.
Right.
And I think because of that, both of these big companies are in a wonderful position to have some very public competition. Whether that happens or not, who knows?
Right.
But the possibility is absolutely there. And that's entirely why I wanted to have this discussion, because there's a lot of unique things that can come out of that.
So basically, you heard it here first. You can screenshot this. You can replay it at E3 2019 or 2020 when all of this pretty much happens.
Yeah.
Right? Or like TwitchCon. Maybe this year they finally announced like all those games that Amazon Games was working on.
Maybe this year they finally announce a game that doesn't release when everybody is at TwitchCon.
Right. I don't know, man. It's fun to have a speculation episode. It's fun to talk about this sort of stuff because it gets you thinking. And then if I mean, I've always been of the mindset that if you can conceptualize something happening, when it happens, you will have been ready for it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the people that had sub badges already drawn up and emotes drawn up, and then they're like, we're gonna announce the affiliate program. They're like, I'm done. I'm live. I'm good.
Yep. You know? I paid for this 3 years ago. I'm ready.
Exactly. So they didn't have to. There was no delay. They were ready to rock and roll. It always goes back to something King Goth said that has kind of stuck with me. He's like, always broadcast like there's millions of people watching, you know. And it's like, well, why? Because if it ever does happen, you are not going to be ready for it if you haven't been acting like it already.
Yeah,
you know, and like you got to be ready for it. So when I'm watching these companies doing these things, I want to be ready for it, you know.
Yeah, and so I mean, if all of this happens, great. I'm super interested to see what comes of it. If none of this happens, that's perfectly fine too. You know, the possibilities are there, and I think it's on us to watch all of this unfold, and on us to, you know, put our reasonable and articulate voices out there when we need to.
Right.
So unless you have any kind of final thoughts on it, I think
I think we might be a wrap for this episode.
That is a wrap. We're a little over an hour, but that's okay. There's a lot to talk about.
Right on.
And there's a lot that we didn't cover, which may or may not be another episode. Depends what happens and what's unveiled in the future.
Yeah, we'll do some, but we'll definitely come back and retread stuff. That's the fun about doing a podcast like this, right? But things to look forward to. You got anything going on this week before? Well, not. I guess technically we're going to be in the future. So by the time this comes out on Friday, you will have already lived half of this.
Yeah. So I guess what days? Okay. Look forward to the first episode of a new show on Dungeons and Distractions that happened 4 days ago. I hope it was good.
The Blades of the Dark that's going on.
Yep.
I hope it was good.
Yeah. I mean, if you're listening to this on Friday, then you'll have already known what I did throughout the week.
It's gonna be great, man. I'm looking forward personally. I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to stream Monster Hunter World on PC and it not dropping frames or being funky, because I really like that
would
game.
Be nice.
And it'd be nice to play with some folks I haven't had a chance to play with because they don't have a PS4.
Okay, so I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of the Press Pause podcast. We are now available on Twitch in video format. We are available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and TuneIn in audio format. If there are any other platforms that you guys use on the regular that you would like to see us branch out into, hit us up on Twitter or Discord. On Twitter, you can use the hashtag PressPausePodcast. And on Discord, I mean, we're in several servers of our own.
You know where to find us.
Probably already know us.
Yeah, so. If you're listening to this, odds are you've heard of us, or you know us, or you know somebody who knows us.
And we're currently working on like a main hub that you can go to find all of the platforms that we're available on. So look forward to that in the future. And another episode 2 weeks from now.
All right. Until then, goodbye, everybody.
You.